Eyes on Longmont, offering a diversity of topics about our community that will inform and entertain you. We invite you to sit back and enjoy this edition of Eyes on Longmont.
Hello, I'm Vandy Vandervort. This is Vandy's Visions, my studio and home, and I'd like to welcome you to this home. My name is Vandy Vandervort, and I'm a photographer. I am also a Colorado native. My education is Bachelor of Fine Arts in Denver University, Art and Education, Master of Arts in the University of New Mexico in Art and Education, Master of Science in Lesley College in Computers in Education, Diploma from the School of Modern Photography, and I had a year's fellowship at the University of Colorado in Education.
Were you always a photographer?
No, I basically was a teacher for 31 years. I taught from 67 to 69 in Anchorage, Alaska at Central Junior High, from 70 to 84 in Boulder junior high schools like Casey, Baseline, Burbank, and Platt, and 84 to 99 at Broomfield High School. My early personal art experiences were basically costume and mask making for education, theater, and competition. I had regional competitions from 77 to 2000 and national competitions from 94 to 98. These are some examples of my costumes. This first one is Agra from The Dark Crystal. That was a movie from Jim Henson's. The next one, or the next two, are an example of Eagle Dancer. This is the front view, and Eagle Dancer is the Hopi Kachina, is a Hopi Kachina. The next one is the back of my Eagle Dancer. The next one is called the Elizabethan Swamp Thing. It's based on Elizabethan dress with a twist, a lot of Hawaiian fabric. The next one is Fishes, and the head and the hand puppets were made out of foam. Garuda, it's from a Hindu mythos. Garuda was Vishnu's mount, and this is 10 feet tall. The Maiden for Myrrh was inspired by Marguerite. The next one is Neek from the movie Explorers. And I also was a clown in Everybody's Family Circus. I was also included in Costume Maker's Art Book, which is out of print now, but I see that you can get it on eBay.
I understand you were part of the Friends of Photography in the 70s.
Well, I wasn't part of the Friends. I was able to get and have the opportunity to go to a workshop in the April of 75, which was fascinating. It was at Sillamar, and they had Ansel Adams and Harry Callahan, Imogen Cunningham, Judy Dater, Cole and Brett Weston. And I had the opportunity to meet those people. And it was like a really awe-inspiring information that I learned. I also got to meet Jerry Yulesman, and he was just starting out. He's now fairly well known for his surrealist type of photography. About the same time, I joined Flatiron's Photo Club, but I left it in and around '84. I rejoined it in the mid-2000s. I started to compete in 1973 to 1980, mostly mail-in competitions, regional, national, and international. These are some examples of prints that I did when I was still working in darkrooms. I didn't switch over to digital till later in 2000. This first one is the Denver and Rio Grande, part of a Denver and Rio Grande train car. It's at the Colorado Railroad Museum in Golden. It was a black and white print, but was printed on silver paper. That's why it has kind of that grayish tone to it. I did a lot of series back in those days. This is one of my series, which was fire hydrants. So this is called Fire Plug number 4. This next one is called Queen's Shadow. Then I did a series called Sensual Stones. This is Sensuous Stone number 2. And Sensuous Stone number 4 is the next one. And this last one was probably my first compositional photograph. That's kind of inspired me. After starting to teach photography in 1984 at Broomfield High School, I put my competition away till the 2000s. I did other artworks. I did carving, weaving, ceramic, sculpture, and illustration. I illustrated Book of Mun and The Webs of Time.
I understand you are also interested in space.
Yes, I've always been interested in space. In 1984, I applied for the Teacher in Space program along with 11,000 other teachers, was one of Colorado's 13 semifinalists, did not make the final state cut to 2. For the next few years, I had a lot of space-related experiences and have met a number of astronauts and other space-related dignitaries. Handled moon rocks, ooh, and you can't do that anymore. They have them locked away. Toured Martin Marietta. And in November of '84, I went to Space Academy at Huntsville, Alabama.
So when did you get back to photography?
I revisited my past passion of photography after my first big trip since my retirement in 1998. I went with National Geographic Lindblad to Chile, Argentina, Antarctica, Easter Island, and more in 2006. Since then, I have done a lot of traveling. I've visited a total at this time of 75 countries. You can see by the map where I have been. I have found that I've enjoyed taking portrait pictures of people in many countries that I have visited. I do take others like landscape and architecture. As I transitioned into the digital format, I started to explore Photoshop and filtered apps like Paintbrush, Deep Art Effects, Photolab Pro, Snapseed, Distress FX, Photoleap, and Chromorama. Okay, the following photographs are from my travels. This next set is from Antarctica. The first one, and in Antarctica, there were a lot of experiences that I got to do. There was ice. There were not a lot of people, so I didn't get a lot of portraits, but did get a lot of ice and animals. And so a lot of my pictures were of animals, penguins, seals, whatever. So this first one is called albatross. When we visited some of the albatross rookeries, there were tens of thousands of albatrosses. So this is one of many, but I was able to get quite a close-up of it, and I enjoyed it. It's kind of a dark albatross. The next one is called Last Light, and this is a sunset with the silhouette of penguins in the foreground. The only people that we would see were the group that I was with, and this picture shows them among a lot of penguins, and it's called Red-backed Tourists with Penguins, because that's the only other animals that are there, is the penguins and the tourists. This is called Southern Rock Hoppers, and again, we had all different types of penguin experiences, and these were two rock hoppers that they looked like a comedy act. I did take a lot of landscape type of pictures. This one is called Wizard's Castle, and I really like this one because the sky was dark, but I think it was because when I was taking the picture I didn't set it well, and it came out to be really neat because of the dark sky and the reflection of the light off the iceberg. I thought I'd throw in a few pictures of me being in Antarctica. This is me taking photographs of the penguins, and you can see how much I have to be dressed, because it was, even though it was summertime there, it was still a little chilly. We wore long underwear, and I had my hiking stick. And this next picture is with myself and young elephant seals. They were called weaners because they had been weaned from the giant elephant seals, and they had already gone out to sea. And these elephant seals love to suckle on your boots. The next set of images are from Cambodia. This one, and you can start to see that I've started adding some creative filters to some of my images. And this one is called The Boy Monk. He was quite a little devil, and he would keep hiding. Every time I started to aim my camera at him, he would hide his face, and finally I was able to get him. So I was glad of that because he was a neat looking kid. In Cambodia, there's a lot of sadness because of the atrocities that have happened in Cambodia. This one is called The Cell. And this one was one of the rooms that they kept a lot of people in detention, and it was not a very pleasant thing. The next one is called Tool, and I'm not sure if I'm saying this right. It's called Tool Sling. And it was a school originally, but it was used to house all of the prisoners and to torture them. But this is one of the hallways, looking at the bars on the windows and the shutters, and how many people would have been jammed into this place. But it was a very depressing place. Next, we are in China now, And I have lots of pictures of China. This first one is a Chinese artist. He's wearing the traditional look with the beard as an elder. He was a very interesting man. I also got to experience a Chinese opera, and this is one of the Chinese actors. Great imagery from the Chinese opera. And of course, there's always little Chinese boys, and they were just like any other little kid. They loved to play around, and if you were taking their picture, they might put little horns up. As we were traveling in China, there were a lot of tourists, obviously, and this lady is a Taiwanese tourist. And she and her group were so much fun to talk to, and they were very, compared to mainland Chinese, they dressed more Western and brighter colors and were more open and smiled a lot. And so that was an interesting concept to see the difference between Taiwanese Chinese and mainland Chinese. This is the Tibetan bell ringer, since China now claims that Tibet is part of their country. This is a Tibetan bell ringer. And this is a beautiful, beautiful palace that we went into. But she was really neat. She could barely reach the clapper. There were kids there, and this is a set of twins. This lady is a Tibetan Zhang. She's not Chinese per se. She is a tribal person, comes in from the mountain area, and she was, neat, and I was grateful that she allowed me at least a few seconds to take her picture. But you can't see it very well in the picture, but when she smiled, which wasn't often, she has 2 gold teeth right here. And then this is me again. This is in southern China at a fishing village, and I'm steering the boat. Now we're in Egypt, and Egypt is wonderful. And I was in Egypt probably about 3 months before the Arab Spring, so I was grateful that I was able to see it then. There were a lot of pictures I took of people, but I think I was more interested in the camels. This first one is called Antique Camel. And what's interesting, this camel, the pyramids are not that far from downtown Cairo. I mean, you can see them throughout all of Cairo. So when you look at this picture, you see only sand and desert and open space, and right behind me is Cairo and the bustling city of Cairo. The next one is called Cart to Cairo. Again, it's a horse-drawn cart instead of a camel-drawn cart, pretty much in the same place as the camel was. So Cairo is behind me. We did a lot of traveling throughout Egypt, and this one is the man of the columns. And he was one of the many, I guess you would call him guides. If you needed anything, even though he didn't speak English, he would help you find it. But he was neat looking, and he was gracious enough to pose for me, and the sun was setting, which was really nice. This next one is interior, and it's a filet altar. This was an inside shot of this pedestal at the very back, and the lighting and the hieroglyphs on the colonnades as they go back into the picture. This is me on a camel. This is one of the many camels I've ridden in my life. This was the best camel ride. We went out into the desert, spent an hour or two riding around in the desert, and you could guide your own camel. You didn't have anybody leading you. And this was really lots of fun. It was very comfortable to ride. I do have pictures of Europe, but Europe has not been a lot of, when I did a lot of traveling in Europe, I was much younger, much less likely to take a photograph, let alone a good photograph. So I don't have a lot of European pictures yet. That is to come, I hope. So here's a few that I have taken in recent travels. This one is called Escargot Escapes. And this is a bag of escargot in shell, little snails. And one of them is trying to escape. The next one is called Flamenco Dancers. Again, as you can see, I'm starting to use the filters on some of my pictures. And we had an opportunity to learn to flamenco dance. And these were some of the ladies that taught us. Okay, this is called Penna World. And it's actually the window is covered with a world myth. The guy holding all the world and the leaves and the trees and so on his back. The next place is in India. And India is probably one of my favorite places to go. I've been there several times. I've been both to North and Southern India, which is two different places. If you go to India, you want to go to both places. You want to see the North and the South. So this first one is what everybody goes to see, is the Taj Mahal. And this is the gate as you're looking through to the Taj Mahal. And all the people are starting to take the traditional picture of the Taj. In India, people are really very open to having their photographs taken. And you can talk to them, and they bring you into their photographs, their family photographs, if they're having a family there. They're very, very open people, and really, and with all of the saris and the colors that you see, I found it fascinating. The people were very generous and very warm. So this one is called Crone Beauty. It's obviously an elderly lady, but she had such a great face. I don't show her whole body. Unfortunately, her hands were quite deformed, and I didn't want to make that the main part of the picture. I thought she was had a neat face. This next one is called Divi Commuter. This was a great story. He was traveling on one train. He was going to Delhi, and I was on another train going to Jaipur. I was sitting looking out of my train window, and he was sitting on the platform on the train just across the way. And of course, I connected, and I started taking his picture, and he didn't shy away from it or anything like that. And I think he was really a very nice looking gentleman, and it turned out to be, it's one of my favorite pictures. The next one is called Girls on a Bus. And they were young girls just getting out of school, looking through the bus window. It was a pretty decrepit bus, but they were great. They saw me taking their picture, and they loved to smile. And a lot of times the younger kids really like to have their picture taken. There's always festivals going on in India. This is a Holi festival, and I call it the Holi Reveler. And this is the festival in which they throw colored dusts out and hit people, and you're all covered with all of these colors of dust that you can see on his face. And I just prayed that they wouldn't throw any at me because I didn't want it all over my camera. Thank goodness none got on me. I was able to avoid it. This one is called Indian Kitchen. This is lunchtime. And you can see the people behind this man waiting for get their lunch. And he's got a little stand there, a little cook space, and that was fascinating to watch. The cooking and the making, and all in a very tiny space, and that was how he earned his living. The next one is, that's something interesting about India. A lot of people sweep their doorsteps, and they sweep the sidewalks near their houses or their places of living. But they sweep it into the street, and no one picks up the trash. So that's sometimes why it looks a little dirtier than normal, but they keep their property really nice and clean. And so this is this lady doing her morning sweeping and everything, and it was really, I love the colors she was wearing. One of the other things that was a big deal in India are weddings. And there's lots of weddings, and they're all public, big weddings. Sometimes they're held at famous places. And in this case, this little girl who has really big eyes, she was one of the flower girls for this wedding. I have lots of pictures of the people in there, and you'll see a few more a little bit later on. But she had such a great face, and she had the bindi dot and the markings on her forehead. The next one is called Mother and Child. Again, you see a lot of mother and children and a lot of children. She was very sweet. This young man is a New Delhi youth. He had a leather jacket on, jeans, and all sorts of things. He was a neat kid. He spoke a little English, which always helps when we're trying to communicate. And I don't speak, a lot of times I try to learn a few words of the place that I'm going to. So we were able to communicate, and he was very nice. This is called Orange, the New Black. One of the things that Muslim men cannot do is dye their beards black. They can dye it other colors, but they can't dye it black. So a lot of Muslim men will start to wear orange beards. So it's either henna or some other color that they're using. This one is called Rajasthani in Pushkar. Pushkar is a town, it's not a very important town, but every year it has a camel, they sell camels, they sell cows, they sell horses, and it's a big fair and dust and lots of activities, and lots of people go there to buy the camels and the horses and whatever. And this is a Rajasthani because of his turban. Fascinating man. The next one is a sadhu. Most sadhus will put their hands up like this and block their face and do that. But if you pay them, they'll unblock. So I don't usually pay my subjects. I try to get them in a natural way, because a lot of times if you pay them, then they pose and it's not as natural. So this is a sadhu, and I did pay him. Thank goodness he didn't just stare at me. The next one are Sufi worshippers. That's another variation of Muslim. And the gilding on the temple behind them really accentuates the blue colors of their garb. The next one is called the bathers, and people bathe in the rivers. They don't get their bathtub out or go into their shower normally, especially the people out in the countryside. So here are two people doing their, I don't know if it was Saturday or Sunday or what day it was, but they were doing their bathing, and I thought it was such a beautiful picture. This is called the Gardens of the Taj. This is technically the backside of the Taj Mahal. You come in on the other side and then you eventually work your way around. And these were two ladies with their saris strolling through the gardens. It's very hazy because there's a lot of pollution in India, but it kind of gave for a very nice effect. This one is called the rice planter, and I don't think I'd ever want to be a rice planter. You bend over a lot. You put in small stalks of rice and you plant them in the water. The other interesting fact about this, that's also where a lot of cobras live. And we had the opportunity to go out and try plant, and I said, I'll take pictures and I'll watch. But a lot of times when you're driving along the road and you stop at a little stop wayside to get a drink or coffee or whatever, they have these big jars full of a cobra with maybe a bird in its mouth. They're all dead, but they're in this, and you say, oh, where did you get these? Oh, out back. So I didn't do a lot of tramping through the grasses in India. I stayed on the open paths. This is a man, I think he's probably just getting off work and going home, but I call it the water carrier. I love the background because it had a lot of graffiti in it, even though it wasn't. They must have peeled off a lot of posters, and there's a little bit of remnants of things left over. This next one is one of my favorite ones. This is, like I said, a lot of weddings take place in India. This is called Wedding in Pastels, and I try to make it look like the image was done in pastels, soft pastels. The man was anointing his wife. There was lots of flowers. This next one is again from a wedding. This is another young Indian. She was also attending a wedding. Like I said, there were lots of weddings. And then this is me being anointed by an elephant. Now this is very lucky. Elephant snot is extremely lucky. So if you get sneezed upon by an elephant, you will be very lucky for the rest of your life. And so this picture shows me being given luck. Okay, now we have moved to Indonesia. Again, a really fascinating country. This first one is called Bali Beauty, and the people there were beautiful. Young girls, and she had the gardenias, and it was just really a very nice picture. The next one, kind of in contrast, is called The Dance of a Cat Eater, and that's Khat. And cat is a flower that has some hallucinant properties. And a lot of young people, and it's legal, a lot of young people, it's kind of their marijuana, will eat that, and then they kind of go and dance and become really kind of weird. And this young girl was eating the cat as she was dancing, and her hair was flowing out, and Again, this is of some of my pictures. This is another one of my favorite pictures of her eating the cat. The next one is called Sister and Brother number 1, because I had a lot of sisters and brothers. And these were twins, male and female. Female on the left and the male is on the right. Obviously, the female has a hijab on. But it was a really nice picture of the kids. Really enjoyed them. Then here's another 2 kids. These are sisters. They're not young, they're not old enough yet to wear hijabs, but so they still have the wildness of their hair and everything showing. But again, I like kids are fun to take pictures of. I have to be very careful about how you take kids' pictures. Sometimes parents don't want that, but usually I ask or I indicate, or the kids are on their own anyway. There's no parent around, and so I try to get care. And I try not to make it, anything that would be compromising. This next one is called Suspicion. This lady looks like she could just cut my throat any time now. Actually, she was cutting flowers, and I just caught her at a don't really take my picture moment. So it really looks like she's going, I'm going to get you if you aren't careful. But she had this beautiful blouse on, and she had the nice field in the back, but she was cutting flowers, and she smiled later on. The next one is called The Look of a Bali Dancer. This is a male, by the way. He's a young man that is training to be a belly or Bali dancer, to do the traditional movements with the fingers, the hands, the eyes, the costumes. So he was showing a pose. He was older. I have pictures of some of the younger kids trying to figure out how to do their eyes and wide open, and their hands, and they must practice to get those joints to go way, way back, because they just arch back around. One of the things that a lot of people do wear, especially out in the countryside, they wear towel turbans. They look like a towel wrapped around your head, but they were towel turbans. And this one worked out really nice with the filter because it really accentuated the design in the turban. And the next one is me with a friend of mine. This is a Komodo dragon. I had the opportunity to walk through the forest of Komodo dragons, and they were not little ones, they were big ones. And we walked in small groups. We had a guide in the front with a forked staff and a guide in the back with a forked staff. And they said that if one of the Komodos would charge, they'd try to get the forked staff into the Komodo's nostrils and stop it. One of the guides had a large scar on the back of his calf. Turns out he'd been bitten by a Komodo at one time, which just ravaged that. He was lucky. They have to fly you to the hospital from where we were. And they say because of the poison, and now they realize that Komodo dragons do have poison in it. And also the bacteria can just decimate your flesh very quickly. And that's how they kill. But this is a great picture because it foreshortens me. I'm not that close to the dragon, but I had to have my picture with a Komodo dragon since I like dragons very much. My last trip before COVID was in 2019. It was in November, so COVID must have been around there somewhere. I was in China. I went from China to South Korea and to Japan. So that was my trip during that time, just before COVID came out. So this picture here is from Japan, and this is a Japanese bride. They use a lot of their parks to take pictures or to have their weddings. They're not as open to photographers as Indian people are, but this was such a nice picture, and she was open to letting me take pictures because she also had her own photographer. So I stood back and right behind her other photographer, and her other photographer took one picture and I took mine. So it worked out quite well. I also had the opportunity to meet a sumo wrestler during that time frame. And as you can see, I got to sumo wrestle him. I don't know who won. I'm here, so I must have not been hurt badly. But he was very nice. He was lots of fun to be with. He really played it up. And this is not Chinese Mongolia. This is the Republic of Mongolia. They used to call it Inner and Outer Mongolia. I'm in Outer Mongolia. When they talk about the steppes in Mongolia, it's flat prairie. And that's what it really is just flat prairie with little short grasses. And once in a while there might be a hill, there might be a lake, but pretty much just as far as the eye can see is this expanse. But as you're driving along, you see the herds of camels, you see the herds of horses, and that's really neat to see a herd of horses running along in this open expanse because there's not a lot of fences. This first picture is called the Janrasog Buddhist sculpture, which is huge. It's probably 20 feet tall. So this is just an upper part of it. The next one is Mongolian beauty. This young lady was a dancer. I could not take, if I were to take her whole picture, which included the top part of her hat, I'd have to step way back because she has about a 2-foot tall cone on top of her hat. So all you're seeing is just kind of looks like a skull cap with a little bit of the cone showing. But she had beautiful locks and gorgeous brocade, and we were actually enjoying her out in the middle of nowhere. This was at one of the races that they were having. Everybody drives in. They drive in, yes. They have cars. They have motorcycles. They also ride in. And we were there they have music. They have young people playing pop music. They have throat singers. They have races. And once they leave, there's nothing there. There's no buildings. Everybody pulls up and they start to do their thing. So she was one of the dancers. This next one is called Mongolian Mother and Son. And he just graduated from military academy. And this is in the capital, and proud mother with son who just graduated. This might have been one of his teachers, this next one. This lady, she looked very military, but she had a bouquet in her arms. And it kind of looked, like, oh, okay, because she was very stiff and very military stature. So I asked her, I went, may I take your picture, And she was like, me? And so I got a picture where she was like, you want to take a picture of me? So I really like this picture. There was a lot of people in the background. I mean, lots of people. So I blurred the background out so you don't see all the people, because she almost disappeared. Even though we were in summertime in Mongolia, it could get cool, or little storms could come up and you get this kind of ice rain. The man here in the picture is showing off his furs. He really didn't need them. It was probably too hot for him. I would have liked to have worn them, but he was showing off of his furs that he would wear in the wintertime. This next lady, I call her the woman of the steppes, because most of the women that I met or saw were aged, very, lots of creases, lot of skin, they've been out in the sun, their skin's very tight. And this is more like what you would see the average woman in Mongolia. It's not that they're not pretty or anything, but as you're outside a lot and you're in the wind and you're working hard, she would milk mares to get their milk. So this is kind of a general look of what the people look like there, the women. This next one is me on another camel. This is a two-humper. You would think, having the support of the two humps, it would be much easier to ride and much more comfortable. It was not. It was very uncomfortable. And the guy led the camel, so that was fine. So I didn't stay on it very long. So I've been on one hump and two humps. The next one it's a stone turtle. It was near where Kublai Khan and Genghis Khan were known to be. And this was one of the carvings that was near an encampment that they had at one time been in, long time ago. And this is me with a turtle. And then since I've been on camels, one man asked, as we were going to see some other things in the Mongolian camp that they were showing us, would anybody like to ride a yak? My hand went up and I got to ride the yak. So yak was just a long-haired cow, and they're wonderful. They're very gentle. And so the guy led me in, so I got to ride a yak too. Okay, so we're now in Myanmar. When we went to Myanmar, there was not any problems at the time. It was still sort of governmental rule, but there wasn't any trouble going on. And it's a really fascinating country. The lady I'm showing here now is called Betel Nut Smile. And a lot of people, both men and women, will eat this little betel nut, not beetle, it's betel, B-E-T-E-L, betel nut. And as they chew it, it also gives them it's like chewing tobacco in a sense. It gives you a little bit of a tang to it. But it also stains the teeth. So you always know who's been eating betel nuts. And this lady was constantly eating betel nuts. And I wanted to take her picture because I wanted to take her teeth. So how do you politely ask somebody? Because as soon as I said, may I take your picture, her mouth went, and I went, so I took several pictures that way and then went, and she did. And so I have a really good picture of her. I didn't take it as being ugly. It was taking as a personality trait. A lot of people did that. It was what you saw a lot. I like to see people doing normal things. So she smiled and she gave me a nice smile. This next one is a schoolgirl, and you will notice she has some texturing, kind of a cream, which looks like a cream or paint on her nose, on our cheeks, and so on. That's sunscreen. They have and right now I can't remember what the name of the sunscreen is called, but it's a root. And everybody wears it as a sunscreen. So you always have these smudges of white on the cheeks, on the nose, sometimes on the chin, usually not the whole face. Sometimes little kids have more on. So she has the smudges on there. And the next one, the lady too has the sun cream on her cheeks. This is a cheroot smoker. They make a lot of cigars, roll a lot of cigars in Myanmar. So she has this lovely cheroot in her hand, and a cheroot is different from what we would consider cigar. A cigar has the twisted end and it's closed at one end. A cheroot is just leaves wrapped around more leaves, so it's more open-ended. So she has the cheroot in her fingers and the ashtray in her other fingers, and she's got so all the ashes fall into the ashtray, and she sitting there puffing away on this cheroot, and it made for a wonderful picture. This is called Look at Me, and there's a girl and a boy, even though they are dressed alike. This is part of the Shinbayu celebration. Children, a lot of children will eventually go into become monks, at least. That doesn't mean they'll be a monk for the rest of their life. They might spend a few months, a year, several years, whatever. But you can come and go as you please. But a lot of young kids are having these big celebrations of them becoming monks. So they dress them up in lavish clothing, and they have wonderful food and dancing and so on. And the next day they shave their heads and put a saffron robe on them. And it depends if they're old enough, they'll go and spend whatever time they plan to spend or have their kids spend at the monastery. Sometimes they will put parties together because it's cheaper. So you'll have little kids, but they probably won't become monks until later on in their life. So you have a group of different kids that eventually will become novices. This next one is also, she's older, and this is also a novice, a Shinbayu. This is the Yubin Teak Bridge at sunset. This is the optimum picture that all tourists must get when you go to Myanmar. And you have to do it as the sun is setting because it's the best picture. So they get you all the tourists in the boats and they get them out into the lake, and people are still walking across the bridge. It's the oldest and longest teak bridge in the world. And the silhouettes make for the picture, and the sun is setting. That's your optimum picture. So I think I got the optimum picture being in Myanmar. Now we're in Nepal. Now I had a hard time getting to Nepal, to my trip in Nepal. We were supposed to first go to another place, and unfortunately I got sick. So I had forget that part of my trip, and I caught up with my group in Kathmandu and So this man was there at Kathmandu, and he was namasteing me. So he, with his bindi smear on the top. I got some really nice pictures of people in the selling saffron, tubs of saffron. And saffron's an expensive spice, but tubs of saffron. But we had a guide that took us into the interior. We went into the Kathmandu Valley to see all the beautiful mountains, the Himalayas. Unfortunately, I got sick during that time, and I never got to really get some really good pictures of the Himalayas until I took some flights by the Himalayas. But beautiful country. I had to be taken out on a litter. But I stuck out the trip. I stayed with the trip. We rafted down rivers. We walked across Expansion Ridge. And I said, I need to stay with this trip because the last part of the trip was to Tibet. And that was the place I always wanted to go, is to Tibet. Anyway, so I got through Nepal. So Nepal was on, and that was before the earthquake. And a lot of the places that I saw during the earthquake, or before the earthquake, are all gone now. So I have some pictures of that. This lady is one of the guides that would take us on our trip down the river. And then, of course, since I've ridden camels and yaks, I had to ride an elephant. So this is me on an elephant. It was not easy sitting on the elephant because there was nothing to keep you, well, they put a little cloth there so you wouldn't get dirty, but the cloth wasn't stuck to the elephant, and you kept sliding, and you had a rope, so you're kind of going like this, trying to hold on to the elephant. Okay, we're now in Siberia. I'm jumping around the world here, so it's not any direct thing. We might have been close, and now I'm going somewhere else. I'm back to Siberia. This is actually part of the Mongolian trip that I took. We went into Siberia, took the Siberian Railroad, part of it, to Irkutsk. And you think of Siberia being cold, dreary, and so on. Well, in the summertime, it's not. I would not want to be there in the wintertime, but in the summertime, you have flowers, you have, there's buildings, there's opera centers, there's kids playing, there's people wearing short sleeves and shorts. It's wonderful. So while we were there, this is a zitherist. She's playing, that's what this instrument is called, a zitherist. A zither, actually, and she's the ist. And she gave us a lovely concert. So being in Siberia, you have both European Russians and Mongolian or Asian Russians. So you have quite a mix of identities there. This little girl, I call her Little Siberian, she was such a cutie. She was a little Asian Siberian. She had this cute little yellow dress on, puffy little pigtails, and an attitude. And as you can see in this picture, she had a real attitude. Most of the homes where we went to are made of log. They're not really log cabins per se, but they are made of logs. And they have chinking in there that you can see homes being updated in the summertime by putting more insulation between the logs or building new ones. But they don't do a lot of paint because in the wintertime it just wears off because of the ice and all of that. So usually the paint is done on the decorations around windows. And this is a picture of two windows with some of the paint sort of worn. And that is very attractive to see all of these beautifully decorated windows and doors. This lady is Olga of Siberia. She's an old, what they call an old believer. Certain Russian sect broke off from Moscow and did not want to go by the laws of that religion at that time, wanted to stay with their own religion. And they left, they up and left, and they went to as far away they could get from Moscow, and they went to the western side of Siberia. And so they lived there doing their thing, they're farmers. And this lady, it's a matriarch society, so she was pretty much the matriarch. The jewelry she's wearing are huge amber beads like this. It must weigh a ton. And she was the neatest lady. I have a picture of her next to where I sat next to her. Somebody said, "You look like she's your cousin." Anyway, and that's true that we did look alike. So I'm going, wonder where that came from. Here's another picture of windows and their paints, made for a really nice set of images. Okay, now we're in South America. I kind of made this a general thing since I was in several different countries in South America. I haven't done a lot of South America. I'd like to do more. This one is in Peru, and this is called Business Sucks. And as you can see, why? She was very nice. She had to take time out for her baby and still sell her wares. So this is called Business Sucks. This one is Lines of Time. She was a bent over, we were in a fairly high mountain area, bent over lady, but she had a great smile, a great personality, moving along the streets. And I was privileged to be able to get such a beautiful face. I love older faces. They have more character. This one is part of Torres del Paine, which is outside of Chile. It's a national park. Beautiful, beautiful mountains. And so basically I took mostly mountains there. There weren't a lot of people to take. So a lot of the mountains I took. So this is one. And then the next one, these are Torres del Paine. Torres are like the horns. And these are what they call the horns in Torres del Paine. They're a set of mountains that have things that stick up much like horns do. And then I went to Central Asia. Say, what is Central Asia? Well, that's where the stands are. We have Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, etc., Pakistan. Well, some of the countries you can't go to, or at least I wouldn't want to go to at this point in time. But I was able to go to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan, which again, you're sandwiched. You have Russia and China being on all sides, so to speak. You're kind of surrounded by this. So you have a mix of European Russian and Asian Russian, or in this case, Stan, so Tajiks or Kazakhs or Uzbeks. The people there were wonderful. We had a great time there. Lot of expanse in between. You drive from one town to another and there'd be nothing. And then you get to a little town and you have really a beautiful little town, and then you drive more and it'd just be kind of sand blowing across the desert. And in order to get into Turkmenistan, which was hard to get into, it's special, they allowed you only a special amount in. You had to walk across the border. So here you are, you drive up in your bus and you get your bags out of the bus, and you go through the check-in station on one side of the border. They look at your paper. They have about 4 tables, and each one of them looks at you. And you're dragging your luggage. It's hot, and you're waiting. And then eventually they let you out the door. And then you have about 1/4 mile of sand or whatever between you and the next building to get into the next country. And here you are dragging in your luggage and everything, and then you get in, and they, again, 3 or 4 tables to check your passport, and eventually you go out. Then you have to wait for everybody else to get there. So it took about 4 hours to get from one country to the next. But it was really very interesting. This lady that I'm showing now is called a bread cook. Now, the way they cook their breads, they have these big ovens, wood fired from below. They take the bread, slap it on the inside of the oven. So she's leaning down in this hot oven and slapping it along the inside of the oven. But I got a really good picture of her after slapping, but it was like, wow. We had a demonstration by a Kazakh, and he was an eagle hunter. And I got to hold the eagle too. But this is a picture of him, and you could tell that there was a relationship between the man and the bird, and it was just wonderful. And this picture really shows how much he really loved his bird. This next one is end of Ramadan. The women are all just coming out of the mosque, and they're all dressed up, and they're all you can't see it in this picture, but women of the stands will and men too, will cap their teeth in gold. And the more gold they have capped, probably the wealthier they are. I don't know. But so all the women, when they smile, and all the men, a lot of men will smile, and they have all this gold. As you can see in this next picture, which is called Knife Maker of Kiva, and he's got a great smile, and all of his teeth from about, I don't know how far into his mouth, all the way across, it's gold. And it makes for a wonderful picture. This lady is a Kazakh woman. She was our host, and that's one of the neat things. When I travel, I have the opportunity to go into people's homes. So she was one of our hostesses. This lady is Lady of Kiev, and she was a neat lady. She was just, a nice lady. She was sitting on the street. I said, "Can I take your picture?" And she reaches over and gives me a nice smile, so that was really cool. This lady is Nuri. I got her name. We corresponded for a while, and you can see one of the temples in the background. She was very modern, and we talked a lot. She was a tourist in the town at that time too, so I sent her picture. This man, everybody else wanted to get his picture because he was in traditional garb. He had a booth at this vendor. He was one of the vendors, and he has bridles and halters and whips and all sorts of things, and he was in traditional garb. No, he wouldn't let anybody take any of their, no, don't, no. So I went over there and I said, "May I take a picture of your granddaughter?" "Oh, yeah, sure. Perfect." And so I took several pictures, and then I went, "May I please take your picture?" "Oh, okay." So I got his picture. So you have to, when you're out taking pictures of people, you have to sometimes create a rapport with them. We didn't speak he didn't speak English, and I didn't speak whatever. So, but you have to find a way of making a rapport or having a very long lens and hiding behind someplace in the distance. So this next one is it's called Tajiki Grandmother. This is Tajiki Grandmother, and you can see her gold teeth and her little grandson. It was a really fun. She was fun. She laughed. She was so open. She said, look at my grandson. So I got lots of pictures of the grandson. And then the next picture is myself with the eagle. And that was a great experience. It's a young golden eagle. They don't have bald eagles there. They have golden. And it was a great experience. I think you can see I was going, ooh, I can pet this eagle. It was like, don't eat my finger. Now you probably wonder, do I ever take any pictures of people in the United States? Well, yeah, I do. And I travel all over the United States. I've been to almost every state except for 4. I'm hoping to get that maybe one of these days. So a lot of my pictures are, it depends. I like to do Western style pictures. I like to get people who are natives of the West. So I've probably gotten more of those. So this one is called Bearded Cowboy. And he actually was a vendor at the stock show, but he had horns in the back and, had horn furniture and all of that. But I used some of my filters on it, and it really turned out really nice. I also have had several opportunities, and I'm very grateful and very honored to have been able to take a lot of Native American pictures. In 2019, at the fort, they have Tosero Cultural Center, which just had another powwow, only they didn't have a full powwow this last time. But in 2019, they still were having it. So I was able to, they do a lot of dance competitions. So you get to know and understand the different dances, the different costumes related to the dance, the different steps, and so on. So I was able to get a lot of really nice pictures of the dancers. So this one is called Dancer 152 because I never was able to find his name. And that happened a lot because there was no program. So I'm trying to find names for this. This next one is called Dancer 159, and he has a porcupine roach as his top knot. So you learn the different terms, different parts of their dance costume. This is another porcupine roach. This is a younger man. Sometimes they do their own beading. Sometimes they buy their beading from other people. I don't know whether he did his own or not, but some people do their own work. And this one is called Dancer 172. And then we're in Georgetown. Georgetown has a lot of wonderful characters there, especially during some of their different functions. So this man is one of the conductors on the Georgetown Railway loop. And he had a great face. This one is a vendor in one of the stores in Georgetown. I call this next one I call Jovial Cowhand. This one that I'm showing now is called Mall Guitarist. And Boulder has a lot of street people and buskers. So you can get a lot of good pictures of different people doing things on the mall. This one is called Mall Trumpeter. He's quite a well-known entertainer on the mall. He sings, he dances, he plays trumpet. This one is called Mule Man. And when I went to the Cliffs in Wyoming, they had a festival going on there, and he had a buggy with a mule that he was pulling it. So I call him Mule Man. This one is stock show mustache. And there was this man at the stock show that had a great mustache, so that's why I took his picture. It's really, I'd love to find him. I gave him a card. A lot of times I try to do that. But I gave him a card and he hasn't connected with him, but I didn't get anything from him. So if I ever see him again, I'd like to give him this picture for him. Okay, these are women of the USA. This is called Art Girl. Now, a lot of times in Longmont, when they have the Friday art walks and things like that, different places have activities going on. And at one time, this place had, the lady was the canvas, so she was being painted and different things like that to create an effect. So I call this Art Girl. And this next picture is my cousin. She was a wonderful lady. She had she just had a great personality, and I think of all the pictures I have of her, this is the one really shows her personality. Unfortunately, she has passed away a number of years ago. This next one is also a Native American. She's called Dancer 145. To me, she even has kind of a Spanish look to it. She has a great stature of her doing her, she's a jingle dancer. You can see the jingles hanging from her costume. But she has a great bearing, very proud. The next one is Dancer 167, and she's a cloth dancer, but she has cowrie shells sewn to her costume. It's a much slower dance than a jingle dance. This one is also a jingle dancer. You can't see her jingles, are all over her skirt. And the next one is called Painting the Sky. So she was dancing, the sky was, I enhanced the sky behind her, and it made it look as if with her eagle feather she was painting the sky. During the Women's March, a number of years ago now, there were a lot of fun pictures that I was able to get there, but this lady was sitting up on a wall, and I walked by and I saw her and I wanted to take her picture, so she goes like this. And her hat, we were wearing the kind of cat-like ears on our headpieces when we were down there, and she had a hat that had little ears sticking up. So I call that Peace. Another one, this is a spirit dance. She had a great costume. And the last one is just a portion of this woman's body had this wonderful tattoo going down both arms, but it was all musical. It was, she had musical symbols, she had a violin on it, and so on, and it looked very neat. And I enhanced it with some of my filters, which really makes it stand out. And one more overseas. This one is in Vietnam, and I have some pictures of Vietnam, of people, but this one shows his teeth. I like teeth. I think teeth add to the personality. And he was just a person who was working out in the fields, and I got a really nice close-up and a nice smile from him. And then the next one is called Vintage Vietnamese. This is what a lot of older people, much like Chinese did, where they let the white beard grow. And he happened to be at the Ho Chi Minh Memorial, and I saw him coming across the parkway, and I was able to get a good picture. I'm sure he was unaware that I was taking his picture. But the wind was blowing, so there's a little curl to his beard, and I really liked the picture. And people are not the only things that you can take portraits of. Animals are good portrait takers. This first one is called Bedeviled Yorkie. And you can just see his little teeth going, "Grrr." But he was a great, the wild hair and all of that. He was a great little character. The next one is a blue parrot. My next one is called the blue wolf. Obviously, wolves are not blue, but this one is now. I put a filter on it, and it looks so much nicer with the blue on it, and I got a really great close-up of it. There's a wolf preserve in Yellowstone Park, actually just outside of Yellowstone, and they have a lot of wolves and different bears and things like that to go see. So it's really a great place to take photographs. This one's called Camel Kiss. This was taken in Jordan. I don't know if the camel was kissing the younger camel or not. It could have been just biting the other one, but it looked like a kiss, so I call it Camel Kiss. These are Indian buffaloes in their kind of a rice paddy situation. Probably didn't want the buffaloes in the rice paddies, but they were there. Really nice looking. This is called Irish dog. A couple of years ago at McGuckin's, they have an Irish party, and somebody brought their Irish wolfhound and put a green neckerchief around the dog's neck and a little green hat. And with the Irish, he looks so soulful. It's like, oh, wait until I get home. And so I call this Irish wolfhound. This one is I call it land monster. It's a land monitor. This was in the Galapagos. Plating or the texturing on the monitor was so neat. I enhanced it, and it just, with the one eye staring at you, it's really quite neat. A nice textural study. This one is called Not a Rabbit, but a Roo. So this is a kangaroo, but some people, when they look at it, think it's a rabbit, but it's not. It's a roo. Not too far from here is Shanahan's Ranch, and they still run small herd of cattle out there, and some of them are really exotic looking cattle. I think they're African cattle. Big, huge, not like the longhorns you see in Texas that kind of come out like this and up, but these are these big, huge, almost tusk-like horns, and I was able to get some. They were by the fence, and I got some good pictures of them. This next one is called Skeksis. Well, Skeksis is not the name of the bird. The bird is a Nepali eagle, but it looks like the Jim Henson character that's called the Skeksis, so I call it Skeksis. This one is the stallion of the steppes, and you can see this stallion among the herd with his defiant head and his locks blowing in the wind. And I think some of you may know we have a wonderful, here in Colorado, wildlife sanctuary, and you can get a lot of really good cat, bear, whatever pictures. And this one is of a tiger. Now, I was not that close to the tiger. I had a longer lens, but it's a great picture, really fills the frame, and it looks really neat. This one is a golden eagle. Actually, it's the same one I held in one of the earlier pictures. As of late, in the last year or so, I've been starting to really play with a lot of my photographs. Taking one photograph, maybe putting more than one thing in it from another picture by combining them or changing them. And with the many funky apps out there, you can really get some good things. So this first one, the man that I originally did the picture of was this very nice looking elderly man. And I put on one app that cracked his face and made it really rough and you know, deep chasmed and everything. And then I had another filter that allowed me to change his eyes out. So as you can see, I call this Ancient Curse. This next one is Autumn of Life. This was a picture of a lady, one of the dealers up at Central City. And nothing super about her, but she had a great head of hair. The wind was blowing that day. She squinted a lot. She kind of round in the face, had a great smile, and I played around with it with several different things. And this one I've put some leaves into it, and I just call it Autumn of Life. This is a friend, and she had the mirror sunglasses on, so you get this image of whatever in her sunglasses, and I threw in a really funky background, and it really turned out to be quite an interesting picture. I call it Kathy's World. This one is called Red Voodoo, and it's a combination of about 3 pictures. This is called Streetcar. It's just the interior of a streetcar at a museum. And then I used a filter on it, or at least 1 or 2 filters. And my last one is called Zombie Laughter. It's kind of like the Ancient Curse. I played around with several filters and the eyes, and we came out with Zombie Laughter. Actually, it was a young lady that was fishing down in Boulder, and she had a great laugh, and she smiled a lot for me as I was taking pictures of her fishing, and little does she know what she's been turned into. It's been really nice getting to be able to share this with you as a group. I hope all of you will have the opportunity to be able to travel like I have. I've been very grateful to travel. If you're photographers, I hope you try some of the new filtered apps. They can be lots of fun. You can make a very, very plain photograph into something really interesting. And so when you look at your photographs, don't say, oh, this is very plain, I'm not going to save that. Save everything, because you can really work with a lot of your photographs. I'm very privileged to be a photographer and to have been able to see and meet as many, many people. And I have been privileged to be able to exhibit my work and sell my work. Goodbye. Thank you for coming.